so you can make more money. If you're paying additional taxes, you're not going to reinvest it in your business or employees, and therefore, what we're seeing in businesses like Amazon is they're moving their corporate headquarters elsewhere. And again, that's not tax fraud, that's tax avoidance. And so I think you're seeing that as well. So,
Question, Peter?
So you,
Oh, sorry, Sharon. I'll get right to you. Hang on, Sharon.
so you mentioned business, but doesn't this also affect individuals who might have a home that's appreciated in values?
no, this will not affect. So there's a number of exclusions to this, and so your personal assets like that outside are not going to be impacted by this. Okay. Right now, and they may be by the federal, they not by the state though.
No, it wasn't a question. It was, well, yeah, it was a question. They were talking about only X number of people would be affected by it because it's, if you make over, is it 25,000 in interest or 250,000 in interest, it isn't just the businesses, is it?
So
it wasn't, just a second, was not all of this started and pushed from California by the billionaire that didn't want to pay taxes?
Well, I don't know what the impetus is of it, besides trying to create more revenue. But so the capital gains would be if you buy something and it grows in value, or you have additional equity. I mean, it's kind of in tax law. You know, you buy something, so you have your corpus, and then you have the gain. So that's what the capital gains would be. It's a gain in value of something you paid. So I think for those who, in the state law, it's realized gain. I know and I know in the federal proposal by one of the candidates, it's unrealized gain. But we're talking about realized gain here, that if you buy something at, I don't know, 1,000, and you sell it at afterwards for 251,000, you've now realized $250,000 in capital gains in a tangible property issue. I mean, I don't want to get into the weeds of what is and what's not per se, but that's kind of what we're talking about in terms of capital gains. So when we pass, when it was passed, there's no limit on reducing that 250,000 back to the 25,000 as it was proposed. If you vote no, if you vote yes, it wipes the entire capital gains tax away, so there wouldn't be any capital gains any longer.
Yeah, as a practicing CPA, I had a client that sold a store, and he ended up having to pay $67,000 on that capital gains that he wouldn't have been before. But I think the biggest thing that people need to realize on this, it just opens the door for more taxes. If you do, it really does. In 1913, the federal income tax, they said it was going to be a tax on the rich. Well, look where we're at now. And so you're opening the door for more taxes, and one party now is even, like you mentioned, the unrealized gains. Well, can you imagine the mess that would be? Your house, it goes up in value. We're going to tax that. Are you going to give me money back if it goes down in value? I mean, it's just, you're opening the door, so you really got to be careful. Don't let them pin it with, well, this helps the schools. This is a tax on the rich. That's all a big a sale job on it, really.
Yeah, and I would agree. I mean, the biggest fear I think people have, and while there were, I think, 3,200, 3,300 capital gains tax returns filed or eligible to be filed, a lot of folks are just not filing them until they figure out what happens here. The big fear is that the bill was introduced at 25,000, which would impact virtually any small business owner is going to get impacted then, versus the quote unquote rich that is argued under that. So, yeah, I mean, any additional taxes, especially on small businesses, especially on individuals who are building a business as part of their retirement portfolio, can be pretty painful, especially in consideration with what the federal government's doing in terms of the proposals to increase it. The next initiative, and I have it all written down here because, as you can see, the ballot's really small, right? It's small. And I don't want to wear glasses up here because my wife might be watching, and then I got to admit that I need reading glasses, so I don't want to do that. I'd rather struggle. The next initiative, number 3 that you're going to vote on is 2117. Now, this is one that's super hotly contested. This is a repeal of the Climate Commitment Act. And a lot of people don't really understand, so what is the Climate Commitment Act? Because it sounds good, committed to the climate. But what it really is, the CCA passed in 2019. It was a year before I was elected. But it didn't get enacted. It got passed, but didn't start till 2023. And as you saw, the impacts of Climate Commitment Act wasn't necessarily direct on fuel prices. It was indirect on fuel prices. Now, Washington does have number 2, number 3, depending, gas tax in the nation, the highest in the nation. But what the Climate Commitment Act did is it created a cap and trade or cap and tax type market where a polluter can buy credits for the ability to pollute. I tease, and in Environment and Energy Committee, I always tease and call it a sin tax. So what it does is it will set pollution levels and say, you can keep polluting if you buy the right to pollute, but just remember, we're going to issue less credits as years go by. And so what that does, though, and what's happened is that industry is converting, but converting because of the stick, not the carrot. And there's no real process for how a lot of businesses are going to meet these goals. Now, the state of Washington has never met a climate goal since Governor Inslee's been in office. Has not met one. We've missed them all. And this is another one that we keep missing. This year, and you saw that the impact of the Climate Commitment Act, and this is not me saying it, this is study after study, that the impact was up to 50 cents extra per gallon of gas in the state of Washington, retail gas. And what Washington did is they used a study, and it's probably one of the only times I've actually quoted it, the state of California. California actually has a method to determine how much their credit market is impacting their price of fuel at the pump. It was fascinating. I talked about it on the floor. I didn't understand a word I was saying, but I asked for the ability to read, and the speaker granted it. So I read what it was. And it increases Washington by 50 cents per gallon. In addition, this year, the state of Washington passed a bill to link our market to the state of California and the Canadian province of Quebec, meaning all our credit markets are going to be combined into one. So a French Canadian in Quebec can buy Washington credits to pollute in Quebec. In discussions and debates, they said, well, what's going to stabilize the market? I don't disagree with that statement. I do believe that linking these credit markets is going to stabilize the market. But you're taking the Washington fuel prices, and it's hard to believe, and you're linking them to a state and a province that has higher fuel prices than us. So it will stabilize it, but it's going to stabilize it up here, not down here. So it's going to actually increase the cost of fuel by linking. That being said, we're linked. Initiative 2066 is, or not 2066, I keep scrolling down, 2117. If you vote yes, we're going to continue the Climate Commitment Act cap and trade market. And the funds for that, despite what you read in the newspaper, the funds cannot be used for roads and bridges and transportation. The funds can only be used for carbon reduction. So EV charging stations, I think this year we spent about 100 to 150 million in EV charging stations, and other green energies that will move us to full electrification of the state of Washington and get away from any carbon emissions. That is what 2117 does. So if you vote no, you want to continue the policy. If you vote yes, it's going to repeal the Climate Commitment Act and the cap and trade credit market. Now, if you vote no, things probably will stay about the same. Our gas will be linked, so our gas prices might go up still because we're going to be linked with Quebec and California. So we will have a less fluctuating market, but most certainly gas prices are going to go up. But you're still going to have those investments at a higher level in carbon reduction type programs. If you vote yes, and if you're hearing a theme here, like yes repeals this law as well. It would repeal the Climate Commitment Act, and we would go back to pre-2023 levels of funding for carbon reduction, green energy. I mean, the state of Washington funded green energy and carbon reduction well before the Climate Commitment Act, and it'll continue to do so. It just won't be at the same level as it is with the credit market and the way it's set up now. Does that make sense? I know I move around a lot. I think it's the lawyer in me. I kind of just want to talk to the jury.
Got a question in the back by Doug.
Really quick here. In the last 3 initiatives, the way they're read, I'm sorry, but my question is, who's writing the wording and the verbiage? Because it's very confusing. I mean, you know, yes would repeal it. I'm sorry, but I think it's very deceptive. So my question is, who has in charge of writing the initiative, the verbiage for each one of these?
Well, your attorney general. Yes, lawyers, but not these kind of lawyers. Yeah, I mean that's the problem. Is that a lot of the language in the ballot is going to be, you can say deceptive. I'll just say confusing, which is why there's a lot of us going out there. Not necessarily. Look, I'm going to have a little bit of a slant on these. I mean, I've spent the last 4 years arguing and knee deep in like this policy, so I'm going to have my opinions, but I'm trying to go through these and say, look, I'm not going to tell you to vote yes or no. If you like the Climate Commitment Act and you like the gas prices and you like what it's doing, then vote no. But if you don't, vote yes. So a lot of this is education to let people know, you know, whether we're talking about a ban on natural gas. A yes on 2066 is a yes to get rid of it. You know, a yes on capital gains tax is a yes to get rid of it. A yes on 2117 is a yes to get rid of it. So that's why I think some folks who are campaigning say vote yes to pay less. That's kind of what their theme is. So it is confusing, and the Attorney General's office doesn't make it easier. One of the things I would recommend, and I don't think I share this as a slide, but there are committees that actually write the pro and con in the voter's guide for every single one of these initiatives. You can be appointed by the lieutenant governor, and it's a recommendation by the four corners. So there could be some legislative people appointed, as well as anybody in the community. If you're confused by any of these initiatives, and today doesn't clear it up for you, one, you could always reach out to me, and I'll help explain it. Or two, go to the voters pamphlet, read the pro and con arguments for it. I was lucky enough, I was the only, I think, House member that got appointed to a committee to write the the yes vote on this next one I'm going to talk about, which is 2124, which creates an opt-out for the long-term care payroll tax. So with 2124, we know, or many of us know if you were paying attention, if you're a W-2 employee, you are automatically now enrolled in what they call Washington Cares, which is a long-term care payroll tax funded program that will tax you 58 cents for every $100 right now. It could still go up or down, go up. And in return, you get an estimated benefit up to $36,500 lifetime, not every year, because I get a lot of questions about that, a lifetime benefit of $36,500 to pay for some long-term care needs. If you vote no, It's a mandatory program. Every single one of you who's a W-2 employee will pay it whether you like it or not, because there's no opt-out anymore. There was about 500,000 Washington employees who opted out. That opt-out window closed, so now we're all stuck. My 13-year-old daughter, when she turns 16, or hopefully she starts working earlier, I don't think they allow chimney sweeps anymore, but maybe, she will start paying that for the rest of her life if you vote no, because it makes it mandatory. If you vote yes, you can still stay in the program, you can still opt into the program, but the program's now voluntary. You could also opt out. So you can opt in, stay in, or opt out and choose to leave it and seek whatever you want to do. So for those who vote no, really a lot of the argument is, look, long-term care is a serious problem. And at the end of the day, it's expensive. At the end of your life, it's expensive. And Medicaid pays a big portion of that. And the state of Washington no longer wants to pay those costs, right? So this is helping not really anybody but the state of Washington not have to pay those costs. And I agree, long-term care planning is absolutely important. As an attorney, whenever I'm doing estate planning, whenever I'm meeting with clients, I always encourage them, look, what do you have? Do you have a rider on a life insurance policy? Do you have a standalone? Have you done investments to make sure that your long-term care needs are met? Because it can be scary. So I encourage people to do so. Now, if you vote yes, you can choose to stay in the program, pay the tax, get your $36,500 if you can, right? If you end up needing it, or opt out and find your own needs. So you can, or find your own method of paying for long-term care, whether that is staying in the program, getting a standalone policy. I think one of the big issues people have, and I kind of object to, is that you will be paying into the program even if you don't need it or benefit from it, right? So if you're a mom, right, and you're a parent and you stay at home and your husband or wife works, right, and you get sick and need long-term care needs, your spouse can't transfer those benefits to you. So he or she is working every day, not bringing home extra money. You get sick and you can never access any of those benefits. Only the person paying can access those benefits. Seems kind of unfair in a community property state, which I think it's ripe for a legal challenge once it actually, if it gets implemented and somebody gets denied those benefits. The other issue, too, is that $36,500 from all the testimony we received in the legislature doesn't pay a heck of a lot of long-term care. Actually, it gives you the false impression that your long-term needs are going to be met. In reality, they're not. $36,500 will get eaten up pretty quickly. And the only person that's really going to benefit from that is the state for not having to pay their share of the Medicaid cost for doing it. And that's just not fair, right? Because I know that when my daughter starts working, if she invested the same amount of money, even in just a stock market, she's going to retire or when she turns 60, have a lot more money for her long-term care needs. It'll be much more flexible so her spouse can use it. And if they don't need it, you get to keep it as an asset. Now, if you don't need it, it just goes back into the kitty and someone else is going to use it, right? It's a big problem. The eligibility for a lot of working parents, the eligibility for seniors who aren't necessarily putting in 500 hours of work a month, the seniors, or not a month, a year, and those individuals who are looking for like a second career, who maybe took some time off and are hopping back in, it'll reset your entire eligibility. You'll have to work another 10 years to be eligible, even though you've put in all those years of adding into the long-term care pot. So a lot of folks will say, you know, if you vote yes, you hate long-term care. No, I love long-term care. I just want it to be flexible for whatever you need. To me, the long-term care one, the 2124, is the most reasonable, rational, easy to understand. If you vote no, it's mandatory for everyone. If you vote yes, it's voluntary. Stay in if you want, leave if you don't. If you got a pre-existing condition and you're afraid you might not be able to get something private, stay in the program. I mean, you can stay in or leave. So that's the issue with the long-term care. Any questions on
Right
that one?
back here. This is
yeah.
Christine, and then there's another one over there. I'll get to you.
What I wanted to know about is, isn't it just for if you stay in Washington State, you can't use it if you go to a different state or out of country?
So the rules haven't been really written on that. So there was some legislation that would make that portable beginning in 2030 when the first people would be potentially eligible for it. But there aren't any real rules on it yet. So there's no real definition. So if I go to Arizona and I need long-term care, do I have to come back here and use a provider? Does it have to be an improved provider? Do they get reimbursed? We don't know. And I think that's one of the biggest concerns is that while there's some legislation regarding the portability of it, there's no definition or no process yet for how that works, which is kind of how this program started, right? It was kind of this idea, nobody has followed us in it around the country, and nothing's, and there's been tweak after tweak after tweak because it's a tough program to wrap your hands around because it excludes a lot of people because of the eligibility. And like I said before, I think I take the most offense on this program, and this is probably the most I'll say on any of these initiatives, is that if my wife gets ill and needs it, and she hasn't contributed to it, how is it that I invested all this money my whole working life, and I can't let her access it like I would be able to in other plans, right? That's my biggest problem. Did I answer everything? Oh, good. Well, there you go. Those are the 4 initiatives. Are there any questions on the 4 initiatives? Because one of the things I wanted to touch on a little bit is just why voting is important. And Pastor Kyle talked on Sunday about 5599 a little bit, which is the bill regarding gender-affirming care and parent notification. And I think is that video on there? I don't know if it is. But there was a lot of talk about 5599 last Sunday, so I wanted to include this because it is so important that you stay engaged, get engaged, remain engaged, be a registered voter, and vote your values, and stay active. So there was a piece of legislation that, while it is about gender-affirming care, it kind of isn't. What it says is that if a child wants to go through a process of redefining their gender and they're having issues, whether it's minor counseling, whether it's major in surgery, even if the parent doesn't object to it, because there doesn't have to be any indicia of abuse or conflict in the home, no domestic violence, no anything like that. For all anybody knows, this is a happy, loving family that totally supports this kid. The state has no requirement to inform the parent of where their child is. And this hit really hard with me, and here's my speech on the House floor, so I'll let you guys listen to it, and then we could talk about it, because I really heard from a lot of you and a lot of people in my community about how important this was for you, and it is for me too. So take a listen, because this is kind of what we do.
41st. I love all the children of Washington State, trans or not, whatever they're seeking. This bill is not about that. This policy is not about that. If they feel unsafe, we have services. And maybe this body and these policies that we pass could even bolster those and make them stronger. Unconditional love is something I didn't really know until I had my first child in 2011, and I luckily had that same feeling again 17 months later when my wife and I had my son. This policy is not about broken bonds between parents and children and families. This is not merely about a child who gets kicked out of the house. This is about a child who may have left the house. This policy, again, is not about the broken bonds between family members, but I feel like it tries to break the bonds between a child and their parent. Parenting isn't easy, but Washington State needs to create an environment where families can be successful and strengthened, not set families up for failure. I recall, like many parents, and maybe, Madam Speaker, you've had this experience as well, where for even a brief moment you're at a department store and you lose your child, and the anxiety, the fear. Maybe a lot of parents, and I speak to parents, have had that birds and bees discussion with a child, that uncomfortable conversation that strengthens the bonds between a parent and a child, that builds trust. That is what we need to be doing, building trust. What this policy does is when a child is going through gender affirming for extended periods of time or treatments or counseling, the parent for an extended period of time may not ever know where their child is and never have that opportunity to build that bond and strengthen that bond and build that trust and strengthen that family. We had the opportunity to not only protect children, but build stronger families, and sadly, this policy does neither. And that's why I'm asking for a no vote.
So for me, you know, that's what that policy is about. That policy is about kind of the fact that the state of Washington, you heard it in schools too, is that there's this kind of knee-jerk reaction where whether it's a government agency, DSHS, or DCYF, or OSPI in the school district, where they want to step into the role of the parent, neglecting the fact that we have parents. Not every parent is created equal. Some are better than others. I will admit that. My wife is better than me. But I try. And I think one thing that we need to continue to do as we start developing and expressing our values is, one, not be afraid to express our values and talk about how we need to strengthen families. But use that same type of rhetoric in what we do when we talk to our friends and families about these types of things. I think there's so many people in the state of Washington who have no idea that bill passed and that went through the House and the Senate and was signed into law. I think there's so many people who don't know that the state of Washington, you can contact Sheriff Snaza or Sheriff Sanders up in Thurston County and say, I don't know where my kid is. He may not either. And we have search parties everywhere, and at the end of the day, the state's hiding the kids. And as I said prior to this, in an amendment to it that I referenced in my speech, it was akin to state kidnapping. How do you not let your kids know? How do you not let parents know where their kids are? Doesn't mean you have to reconnect them right away, but there's not an indicia or any evidence that parents were fighting or even in disagreement with the gender-affirming care. Now, my speech up there was not like the greatest because it was late at night. I think it was early morning. I think it was like 1 or 2 in the morning. But it got the point across that the people in my district expressed to me they're concerned about this. And a lot of parents need and want and deserve the opportunity to parent their kids. You know, we passed an initiative to the legislature creating a parental bill of rights. We'll see how that works its way through OSPI's decision-making and administrative. I know it's not. I've been following it. Not going well, which is surprising because on the House floor when we were passing the Parents' Bill of Rights, even the other side of the aisle said, which was passed bipartisan, said, we're already doing this. We don't need this. We already do that. I don't think so. One really important thing is I really hope that this was helpful, but after November, regardless of how you vote, regardless of what issue is important to you, I really want you to stay involved, stay connected with your legislators. We have weekly calls, we have monthly calls. I meet with chambers, I meet with pastors, get engaged. Contact me, I'll let you know when it is and where it is. And we have weekly or bi-weekly calls where we talk to constituents and let them know kind of what's going on. in the legislature, how you can sign in to testify, and how you can be part of this. I don't know if you could run that last video with how to get involved and stay involved, but I think I would just wrap it up with that about staying involved.
20th Legislative District. Lawmakers in Olympia are busy hearing bills every day on issues that affect you and your family. As your representatives, we believe that your involvement and input are critical to the process. That's why it's so important that you know how to navigate the legislature's website, ledge.wa.gov. Here you can find information about bills, committee schedules, contact information, and more. Today I'm going to show you how to submit your position on a bill for the legislative record or sign up to testify live or in writing. On the right side of the website, ledge.wa.gov, you can select Bills under the Find section. That's where you can retrieve information about legislation in both the House and the Senate. If you find the bill you want, you can select Comment on this bill on the right side of the site and send a message directly to your legislators. Among the most impactful voices are those we hear from you in committee. If you'd like to share your opinions with all the members of the committee about every bill that we're hearing from the ledge.wa.gov site, you should select Participating in the Process tab. Once you've selected the right chamber, House or Senate, then use the pull-down tab for the committee where the bill is being heard and select the date and time for the hearing. Once you click the right bill, you have 4 options. You can testify in person during the hearing or remotely. You can also simply submit your position on a bill for the legislative record or submit a written testimony comment. If you're still unsure of the bill number, chamber, committee, or hearing date, go back to ledge.wa.gov and select the Bill Information tab. Your input and voice matter. We're here in Olympia to serve and represent you. If you want more information about how to get involved, you can also visit the House Republican website at houserepublicans.wa.gov/get involved. Thank you for being involved in your government.
Standing up here, I realize how fast I talk. So I'm glad this is being recorded. Well, thank you very much for being here. Again, I hope it was helpful, and I'm more than happy and willing to do it anytime you need, and feel free to reach out to my Ledge office. Thank you.
Hey. Thank you. And I know there's a few more questions, but Peter's going to hang out. He'll be here available. He said, I'll stay as long as there's people to ask questions. We apologize for the online people that the audio didn't get going until a little bit later. We had a computer that dropped down, but it got rebooted, and so hopefully that'll be good and fixed. So thanks for drawing our attention to that. Hey, nice job today. Good questions. I hope it was it helpful to you? Raise your hand if it was helpful. That's great. Peter, look at that. Thank you for that. That's a gift you gave to us, and it's really nice to have a gentleman that'll be up here and explain things in a real helpful way. And if you didn't get your question answered, then he will hang around. Do you want to be in the lobby, or do you want to do it right here? What's better for you? All right. Yeah, I'll send him out to the lobby, okay? That way he's right there, and you can easy to find him, and he'll be there when you need him. So, hey, let's stand. I want to just, again, dismiss you, but let's just pray a prayer over all of us as we go into this election season, that you would have the mind of Christ. You know, I just think that it's so important that we look through the Scripture through the lens of a biblical worldview. And if you don't have that, we'll help you find that, because that's so important. And raising our kids is so important. And many of you who have grandkids, wow, I have 9 of them now. I'm paying attention to things because I have 9 grandkids that are going to live in a world well beyond me. And I'm not afraid of that. I just want them to have a biblical perspective. Amen? So, Father, we thank you for tonight, and we just commit our time and our hearts and our thoughts to you. You are a God that wants to govern in all areas, and I'm thankful for that. We don't separate the secular from the sacred. It's all together. And would you help us? And I thank you for wonderful leadership like Peter and others who are here and willing to serve in this community, really to make it better. And God, would you guide them and direct them, Lord, and grace their families, their marriages, their kids. And we just pray at the end of the day, you would be pleased by the outcome. When the godly rule, the people rejoice. That's what we want. We want godly leaders. We want godly initiatives. We want godly principles. And we want righteousness to prevail. So, Lord, help us as your people. In Jesus' good name, amen. Hey, class is dismissed. Thanks for coming tonight.
Nothing can separate